Crystals, ladies and gentlemen. What is so special about crystals that I want to give a TED talk today about them? Each talk, each presentation should contain a message. And my message is, no computer would work without crystals. No mobile phone, no navigation system, and no military drone. There would be no internet, no artificial intelligence, and no social media. Special crystal systems, artificial crystal systems, form the material basis for all these achievements of our modern world. And in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you something about the history, how these crystals were used as healing stones or for fortune tellers to see the future, till the present, where we use crystals, for example, as basic material for electronics. But electronics is not the only field of application of crystals. For example, our illumination here. In modern LED lamps, the light is generated by semiconductor crystals. And in many lasers, special light is generated also in crystals. We can use laser light, for example, for cutting and welding and drilling thick metal plates, but we can also use light for the transmission of data in our communication networks. In this simple pointer here, you see this nice green light. There are 3 different crystals. In the first one, an electrical current produces infrared light, which you cannot see. This light is focused into the second crystal to form a beam, and the third crystal converts this invisible light into this nice green beam, as you can see that here. Yeah? And then our watches. In our watches there are crystals which oscillate more than 32,000 times per second in order to give us the correct time. And similar crystals, so-called piezo crystals, are used for the generation of ultrasound, which is applied, for example, in sonography for medical diagnostics. Many of our medications are produced on the basis of protein crystals. And our screens in mobile phones and computers are working on the basis of liquid crystals. The enormous importance of crystals in technology is a development of the last decades. Before that, crystals had no technical significance, apart from a few salt. People have always been fascinated by crystals, of course, but they cannot use them. They use crystals for jewelry stones, for example, especially if these crystals are cut and polished. They look quite attractive, of course, but nothing else. Yeah? Some fortune tellers try to see the future in crystals, and medicine men and doctors used crystals also as medication. By the way, and just between you and me, we do the same today. Yeah? We use crystals for the development of computers to calculate the future. Yeah? Or we use crystals as medications. Yeah? Nothing new under the sun. Yeah? So, now, what is so special about crystals? You can see one here. I have this quartz crystal. You can buy this for less than 10 euros in the internet. And if you compare this with ordinary stones, you see there is a regularity. There are regular, smooth surfaces, sharp edges, transparency, brilliance. Yeah. Exotic origin. This crystal comes from Brazil. Yeah. And how we can explain these properties? this was not easy. Until the beginning of the 20th century, no one was able to explain these properties or to develop a theory which explains these things. Yeah, in the middle of the 19th century, the first scientist was able to describe this geometry here by mathematical means. The Frenchman Auguste Brouvet discovered that only 14 different cells are necessary to build all the crystals we know. It's a little bit like having a Lego set with only 14 different Lego bricks to build everything. But it was not explained how these cells themselves are constructed and what forces held them together. During the 19th century, there were a lot of discoveries. They discovered, for example, that such quartz crystals change their external shape if an external voltage was applied. Or some crystals glow in the dark. Or some conducted electrical current in a crazy way. Yeah? It comes in this direction, the current flows, but not in the opposite direction. And so such things. It was not possible to explain them. It was known which elements are necessary to build crystals. Now, in the case of quartz, we have ordinary silicon and oxygen, common elements. Chemical studies have shown that such simple elements are necessary to form crystals. But it was not known why these special forms are created. And just at the beginning of the 20th century, in 1912, a German physicist took the first step to explain what's going on inside such a regular shape. In Munich, Max von Laue and his co-workers used X-rays, which had been discovered a couple of years before, and they irradiated such crystals with such rays, and the X-rays were captured on a photographic plate. And there, a regular pattern emerged. And it turns out that this pattern of points is an abstract image of the arrangement of atoms inside the crystals. It was the first time that we could see into the crystals and that we have an imagination what's going on there. And it turns out that there is a huge arrangement of a very symmetrical and harmonic arrangement of billions times billions of atoms in a regular way. And this was the secret of the crystals. We have in a cubic centimeter 10 to the power of 22 atoms. That means a 1 and 22 zeros behind. It's a huge number, and all these atoms are arranged regularly. This was a big step, a big progress in physics, and just 2 years later, after his discovery, Max von Laue was awarded the Nobel Prize. About 15 years later, it became possible to explain the special properties with a theory with quantum mechanics. And it turns out that crystals, which are responsible for the properties of solids or crystals, that these electrons behave like the vibrating strings of musical instruments. And if there are only a couple of foreign atoms in this regular arrangement that we call crystal lattice, the whole properties change. If we have, for example, such a quartz crystal and there are only a couple of iron atoms in this crystal, the color changes into violet, and we have no longer a quartz, we have an amethyst. So, and then, on the basis of this knowledge, it was possible to discover under which circumstances, which conditions were necessary to grow artificial crystals. Yeah? If we turn this crystal, it looks like an ordinary stone. You can see that there on the right photo there. No? Nothing special. Why was this the case? The point was, on this side here, there were special conditions in temperature, pressure, and concentration, but we couldn't have such conditions here on the other side, and that's why we have an ordinary stone with ordinary properties. So, now in the 1930s, it was discovered that especially silicon and germanium were also crystals, and they are crystalline elements, and they can be used for the construction of small electrical devices. Diodes, for example. This is an electrical device with two electrodes. So, and it turns out that we can use such small diodes in radios and other electrical equipment. And in World War II, the Western Allies developed radar systems on the basis of germanium, and they were very successful. And then it was possible for the airplanes to fly at night and to find their ways and their targets. And the rest is history. The Germans was very surprised about this efficiency and of these attacks, and they missed this development completely. Yeah? And such a technological development had a big impact on the development of history, because you know that Germany lost this war. Yeah? Okay, today we are able to produce small silicon chips where you can find billions of small electrical devices, which we call transistors. And these transistors are able to switch on and off the electrical current very efficiently. And so we have the opportunity to calculate or to make connections between people and all these things we know in our life. But all these achievements are the result of a long history in science. Long story short, people were fascinated by crystals, and they didn't know how to explain that. But curiosity drives science, research, development, and at the end, it works. First, you have to understand what is going on, maybe in nature, and then you can use your knowledge to create artificial things, like artificial crystals, to realize instruments, or other things, small devices you can use in order to get success. It's modern to say today, everything was bad in the past. But the point is, there are direct connections between the ideas of the former generations and our modern technology and science today. We shouldn't forget that. We should study history because it teaches us how we became who we are and what we know. And at the end, I like to borrow and adapt a famous quote of from Isaac Newton, the great British scientist. We, today, could see a little bit further than former generations, because we stand on the shoulders of giants. Thank you for your attention.